Congressional progressives are allegedly getting tired of accommodating to the demands of Joe Manchin and, yes, Senate Republicans who Joe Manchin is courting. Now, Axios claims that these progressives are ready to fight back. Now, to give you a little more context before I tell you how progressives are responding to this, let me just give you a little piece, a little excerpt from Manchin's op-ed over the weekend where he argues that he's gonna vote against the For the People Act. That's the election reform bill that would get money out of politics and expand voting rights. He says, I believe that partisan voting legislation will destroy the already weakening binds of our democracy. And for that reason, I will vote against the For the People Act. Furthermore, I will not vote to weaken or eliminate the Senate filibuster, which, if it's obviously in place, it's going to block much of the progressive agenda and legislation that's currently being proposed by Joe Biden. Now, Jamal Bowman, a progressive Democrat in the House, spoke out against this. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
Manchin is a no on doing anything to end the filibuster. He put it in writing. Your reaction?
Joe Manchin has become the new Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, during Obama's presidency, said he would do everything in his power to stop Obama. He's also repeated that now during the Biden presidency by saying he would do everything in his power to stop President Biden. And now Joe Manchin is doing everything in his power to stop democracy and to stop our work for the people, the work that the people sent us here to do. HR 1 not only is a huge bill when it comes to voting rights, it's a huge bill in terms of getting big money out of politics, protecting our elections against fraud and ending gerrymandering. I mean, big money in politics is what's destroying our democracy, and the Republican Party is aiding and abetting that, and Donald Trump is obviously doing that as well. So Manchin is not pushing us closer to bipartisanship. He is doing the work of the Republican Party by being an obstructionist, just like they've been since the beginning of Biden's presidency.
Now, credit where credit is due. It is incredibly rare to see Democrats hold their own accountable. It's obviously very rare to see progressives hold corporate Democrats accountable the way that you just saw Jamal Bowman do in that video. So he deserves credit for that. And obviously bringing attention to money in politics is something that you've cared about, Cenk. So was that a relief to watch? Are you satisfied, or would you want to see more?
Yeah, so my first reaction was yes, there you go. And unsurprising that it'd be Jamal Bowman doing it. I told you he was strong, I told you. So he talked about Manchin's corporate agenda. That never happens within the Democrats. I guarantee you right now, there's tons of Democrats yelling at him behind the scenes. Now, I don't know that for a fact, but I would be shocked if that was, how could you say that about our beloved colleague? Don't measure his corporate agenda. Why? Because then you'll expose everybody's corporate agenda, which is a huge part of the Democratic Party. But it takes courage to do what Jamal Bowman did. You might not see that because you don't see them yelling at him behind the scenes. And they do it every time. They do it every time. And of course the media. And Berman, by the way, was instantly skeptical. Isn't he really representing the voters of West Virginia? No, he's not. 71% of the voters in West Virginia say they're for the People Act, including 66% of Trump voters. Only 16% of Trump voters in West Virginia say no to the For the People Act. You know why? Because it has anti-corruption. Democratic voters, Republican voters, both love anti-corruption. And it's in For the People Act. And so Jamal Bowman, by the way, Justice Democrat, didn't run on any corporate PAC money, didn't take any corporate PAC money. So he's free to say whatever the hell he wants to say. And it allows him to actually fight against corruption. Everyone who takes corporate money can't, their hands are tied. Because the minute they say, hey, Manchin's taking money, Mitch McConnell's taking money, they're gonna turn around and go, hey, you corporate Democrat, aren't you taking money too? Oops. Why do you think Joe Biden doesn't speak out against Joe Manchin? Because he takes the same money. He takes the same money. So is it quote unquote good enough? Well, look, it's great for a start. And so let's give credit where credit is due. Do we want more? Of course we do. First of all, where's everybody else? Where's everybody else? Okay, come on, the water's warm. You see, hey, Jamal just did it. And did the world collapse? No, Nancy Pelosi told you that if you ever challenged any of your so-called colleagues, that the world would collapse. And you, oh my God, you don't know how things work around in Washington. Well, he just did it, and nobody's world collapsed. You could do it too. And so that was the whole point of building Just Democrats. So they wouldn't take corporate money. That was the one litmus test. It worked. Now let's get it going. But in order to make it more real, you have to keep on building pressure and keep on pointing out it's Manchin protecting his donors, not his voters. And if people back up what Jamal Bowman is saying, then we can have momentum, because guys, the spotlight is important. Because right now, all of the media parrot the talking point that Joe Manchin is bipartisan. When Jamal Bowman puts a lie to that, and as he did later in their interview, and say, no, most of the people in West Virginia, in a bipartisan manner, are actually in favor of this act that he's blocking. And he's doing it for his corporate donors. Everybody goes, oh, okay. And it changes the conversation. It changes it from lies to the truth.
Absolutely. I mean, I always think about, whenever Manchin comes up in the news, in these types of stories, I always think about his panicked reaction. Like he was hyperventilating over Vice President Kamala Harris traveling to West Virginia just to rally support for the coronavirus relief bill. She didn't even mention Manchin by name, right? She wasn't holding him accountable, but she knew what she was doing in going to his state to rally support for that incredibly popular legislation. So obviously he can cave to pressure. We just need progressive Democrats to make him, right? So maybe this is the beginning of that. Mondaire Jones also had some thoughts about Manchin on Twitter. He says Manchin's op-ed might as well be titled, "Why I'll Vote to Preserve Jim Crow." And what he's referring to is how the filibuster, historically speaking, has been used to block legislation pertaining to like civil rights. So I think that talking point can be effective, but it can't just be tweets. It can't just be a few statements here or there. Progressive Democrats, especially in the House, have the power to vote as a block, right? So if they use that leverage moving forward, they could get the same types of concessions that Manchin has been able to get. But they haven't flexed that power yet. They haven't flexed that muscle yet.
So Jane Mayer, in a great piece in the New Yorker, pointed out that Manchin actually could get pressured. He got pressured by Koch Brothers Group and Heritage Foundation, et cetera. They started running ads in West Virginia, and then Manchin then clarified. Now he almost certainly was against For the People Act anyway, because it exposes corruption and he's corrupt. But the minute they started running ads in West Virginia, he was like, okay, I'll come out publicly against it. There you go. Oh, what happened? I thought Joe Manchin was immune from pressure. No, he's not immune from pressure. Anna's right. The minute Kamala Harris shows up, he was in a cold sweat panic. And Politico, funny enough, had a good column a couple of days ago where they explained the problem with Joe Biden, and they didn't say it was a problem, right? I'm saying it's a problem, is that he's all carrots and no sticks. And so what did he do? He gave Joe Manchin's wife a position that she really wanted in West Virginia, carrot, 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 and Manchin slapped him across the face and said, I'm not gonna do any of your agenda. And Biden's like, okay, sorry. You know why? Because he doesn't believe in his agenda. It's not really his agenda. He agrees with Joe Manchin. He's always agreed with Joe Manchin. So he doesn't wanna hit Joe Manchin with a political stick, because he agrees with him. And besides which, even if he wanted to, he's never done it his whole life, except against progressives. He would never do it to a fellow corporate Democrat.
Right.
Okay, and by the way, are they going to get up and start fighting back? Bowman also talked about how this was Jim Crow, and those are fighting words, right? So good job by Mondaire Jones, and particularly Bowman going on television, saying what he said, mentioning corporate agenda. Okay, but in the Axios piece, they say a top Democrat said, quote, progressives are getting restless. I don't think they're going to revolt. I don't think there's anything to revolt to. Man, that's just, if that's true, that's so sad. And
yeah, good luck, by the way. Good luck, Democrats, in persuading voters to show up to the polls and vote for your candidates after, all of the, fear-mongering about what'll happen if those two senators in Georgia, the Senate runoff races, if those Democratic candidates don't win those Senate seats in Georgia, it'll be a disaster. We need to have the majority in the Senate. After all of that, after the voters delivering, if Democrats don't deliver in response to what voters did for them, how are you going to persuade voters to show up to the polls in the future? Like, how many times are you going to lie to people and get away with it?
And I want to answer that so-called top Democrats quote, and don't take that to the bank. That person might not know anything about progressives. They might just be saying that's what they always say, right, in Washington. Oh, progressives, you better sit down. There's nowhere to revolt to. Shut up and do as you're told. That's what they say all the time. I can't believe that progressives in DC ever listen to that condescending attitude the so-called top Democrats have. But let me tell you what the upside of a revolt in this case is. So everybody knows what the downside is. They say, oh my God, what if you lose Manchin and Sinema? Well, you would be in the same exact position as you are now. They're blocking every piece of legislation, so you wouldn't lose anything. Right now, you're not gonna pass for the people. Like, he wrote a whole op-ed saying, I'm not gonna vote for it, even if you didn't have a filibuster. And he's not gonna let you get rid of the filibuster. So you literally have nothing to lose. But you do have one important thing to gain at a minimum, even if you can't move Manchin and Sinema. If you go into an election in 2022 and all the Democrats bowed their heads to Manchin and Sinema and you all got nothing done together, well, that sends a message to the American people, you guys are losers. And you didn't really want to do anything, and you're at best an incompetent party that means well, at best. But probably half the people will get the message, nah, you don't even mean well, right? But if a wing of the Democratic Party, at least a wing of the Democratic Party, fights back against Manchin and Sinema, you send the message that, well, man, some of the Democrats want to get stuff done, right? Some of the Democrats want voting rights. Some of the Democrats are anti-corruption. Instead of all the Democrats are cowards and losers and incompetent. So you tell me which is better. And guys, this whole thing of like, oh, it's better to have Joe Manchin as a Democrat, is it?
No, it's really not.
No, because what he's doing is he's reinforcing Republican framing. And he's making them taking away voting rights all across the country in the states appear to be bipartisan, because Manchin's saying they're protecting voting rights and I want to protect voting rights with them. And it gives them, not only does he vote with them, not only does he block all of our legislation through the filibuster, but he gives them that media advantage that is so important. Because if you're knee deep in politics, you know how bad Joe Manchin is, but most voters don't. All they see is the media calling him bipartisan, 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 unity, wants to work together, etc. That's why you desperately need people like Jamal Bowman and the Just Democrats coming in and going, no, we don't agree with this guy, and we don't agree with the Republicans, and we don't agree with corrupt corporate donors. Because that gives people hope and faith that some portion of the Democratic Party is actually going to fight for them. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.